Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. So before I get started on today's video, I want to remind you that Laertes, a Hamlet retelling, is out, available everywhere. So you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, at your favorite indie bookstore. You can recommend it to your library, however you like to read books. So it's hardcover, paperback, and ebook, all out now if you want to check that out, if you like dark academia vibes. So this video is all about the jargon, the slang that you encounter when you first start entering the writing world. So maybe you've written for a long time, but now you're starting to really educate yourself, watch some YouTube videos, listen to podcasts. I did this for a full year, over a full year, before I published my first book to really understand the industry and what it meant to take a story from just a document on my computer to something that I can hold in front of you today. So to help you kind of ease into that space, I wanted to go over some of that slang that you run into and it can be awkward to ask about. So here's your cheat sheet to understanding the things people are talking about. I'm going to separate this into really two major categories, and I'll have some miscellaneous at the end. But the first is the writing process in general. Now, many of you might have heard of these terms already, but if you haven't, this is for you. So first term I want to talk about is WIP, your WIP. That is your work in progress. There are other acronyms associated with this, such as OC, which is original character, or MC, which you'll hear more on podcasts and things like that, which is main character. You'll also hear the distinction between plotters and pantsers. This just pertains to your level of organization as you write. So plotters, of course, as the name suggests, set out a detailed plot before they begin. Pantsers go by the seat of their pants. Sometimes these are called discovery writers as well, which is a term I prefer, but pantsers is something that you'll hear. So those people do not plan in advance and instead just go for it. Personally, I fall in between these two, but they're often presented as this sort of dichotomy that you fall into one camp or the other. And then the last term, as far as the writing process goes, that you might not be familiar with, is writing sprints. A lot of author tubers will do live writing sprints, and what that is just you set a timer, maybe 30 minutes, that's a pretty common amount of time, and then you sit down and you write. Even if you're not entirely sure, even if it's just garbage, it's a time for you to just write as much as you can in that short amount of time. And it's a way that actually a lot of very successful authors have managed to produce a lot of material because they've trained themselves to write a lot during writing sprints. It's not everybody's thing, but it is a term that you hear a lot, and the purpose of this video is, of course, to educate you on those terms that you might not have heard. Okay, the second major category is publishing. Publishing is a whole new world that has its own terms, its own rules. And so I've separated these publishing terms into the, again, dichotomy that you often hear between trad and indie. I'm going to start with trad. So if you choose to be trad or traditionally published with Penguin Random House or something like that, then there is a process that you go through, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I will tell you some of the big rocks so that you know what people are talking about. So if you decide to go trad with a traditional publishing house, then you have to write a query letter and send that off to agents, literary agents. I used to think that you could just submit your work to a publishing house, and with very few exceptions, there are things like pitch wars, which I believe takes place on Twitter, or I know that Hallmark has an open submission time during October. It's like a week in October. But for the most part, you have to have a literary agent representing your work and sending it to publishing houses with their stamp of approval on it. So you'll write a query, you'll get a literary agent, and then once it's all cleaned up, your work is good to go, your manuscript is set, then it goes on submission, and that is when it gets sent out to the publishing houses, and then you can get a book deal from them, and you'll get an advance, some money in advance for that. Okay, so that is a very, very quick tour of some of the major terms that you'll hear in the trad side of things. And then on the other side, you have the indies. So those are people independently published, largely self-published, although some people going with very small presses also consider themselves indie writers. In any case, it's not going with the big guys, and it's doing a lot more of the work yourself. So with self-publishing, there are a few basic terms to keep in mind, such as POD, or print on demand. If you want to sell more than just ebooks and you're self-published, then you need to go with a print on demand service, and there are a couple big ones and some smaller ones, but the biggest one is Ingram Spark, and they print books, as it is suggested, on demand. When somebody orders it, then the printing service will ship that off to the correct person. Another dichotomy, you could almost think of this as like a chandelier. You have trad versus indie, and then we're going down. And then indie, most people choose between being exclusive with Amazon, because they are the juggernaut in the publishing industry, in the online ordering space, right? Most people sell the majority, if not all, of their books on Amazon. Or wide. Wide means that you sell with Amazon, but you also sell everywhere else. So that means that you can get into libraries, that you can get into Barnes & Nobles, that you can be found outside of Amazon. And there are pros and cons to both of those approaches that I won't go into today. I've tried both to a certain level, but I'm almost entirely wide. So excuse me, if you do go Amazon exclusive, then you are going to use their platform, which is another acronym that comes up a lot, which is why I'm talking about it. KDP, that is Kindle Direct Publishing. So KDP is their platform for not only ebooks, but now they have KDP Print, which will do paperbacks, and they're starting to roll out some hardcover options as well. If you're doing audiobooks, then you'll hear about ACX, and that is like behind the scenes of Audible, their platform for creating audiobooks. There are other wide options where, it feeds into Amazon, but you don't have to use ACX. But that's something that you're bound to hear now and then, ACX as Amazon's audiobook platform. Again, behind the scenes. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it for my publishing. On to miscellaneous. I just had 3 that didn't fit very neatly into any other category, so I'll address those. First one is writing platform. A lot of people talk about having a writing platform. So what is that? That is your website, your newsletter, your social media associated with your author, book, self. Basically, how are people going to know that you are a writer, what you're writing, who you are, what kinds of things you tend to write about? And, if I put your name in Google, what is it that's going to pop up? There should be a set of social media platforms that you've kind of at least begun to curate before your first book comes out. You don't need to be on all of them because that's overwhelming for anyone. But if you really like TikTok and Instagram, then just really drill down on TikTok and Instagram and do different videos and posts about your work or related things, like what you're reading and whatnot. This YouTube channel was originally created as the first piece of my author platform, just to get my name out there, some recognition about who I was and what I was about. And is still the way that a lot of people will find me. So that kind of leads into my next term, which is a reader magnet. So most people recommend that your writing platform include a website, even if it is a fairly simple one, and a newsletter. that goes out periodically to your subscribers. So in order to get people to sign up for your newsletter, then you should have a reader magnet. This is at least general wisdom that I've heard over and over again, and I've finally gotten around to creating a good reader magnet. My original one was the first 2 chapters of my first book, but now my first book is available everywhere. I mean, you can read the first 2 chapters really on some of those look-in sites, like Look Inside Google Play. You can read that whole thing. So I wanted something that was more exclusive and more enticing and less common, I guess. And so a reader magnet is a freebie that you attach to your first newsletter to draw people in. And now my reader magnet is this, the Tanyuan Academy stories. So it's stories that are related to my YA fantasy series, the Tanyuan Academy series, but they're bonus stories before, during, and after that trilogy. So you don't get a paperback copy, but you do get an ebook copy eventually of the entire thing over about the course of a week, and you can choose which stories sound interesting to you and just zero in on those. So that's what a reader magnet is. And then last but not least, you'll hear about ARC copies. So ARC just stands for Advanced Reader Copy, and those are advanced copies that come out before your book is officially published that you send to people and they read it, and it's a good way to generate some early reviews. So yeah, just an advanced reader copy. I had an ARC team for Laertes, which just came out, and it was super fun. They all read the book early, and then I gave them some freebies and behind the scenes and things like that every week leading up to the release, and they kind of posted about Laertes and wrote reviews, and we supported each other that way. It was great. And then kind of related to that team that helps you make the book the best that it can be, beta readers, that's the last term that I'll talk about. I have a whole video about beta readers and my process, but a beta reader is somebody who reads your book before you have a finalized copy that you're sending out to people. And their job is just to give you feedback. It's not to do the nitty-gritty, grammatical fixes or anything like that. These are people who just tell you, oh gosh, that was really out of character, or I couldn't picture this setting, or this chapter was boring, or hey, this part was incredible, don't change a thing. So that's beta readers. They give you this initial feedback after you have, you've worked on the book as much as you feel like you can yourself. They give you feedback, you finesse it, and then you're ready to maybe send off a query or do a final editing pass with a professional. So that is it. What other terms did I leave out? I tried to think of the big ones that at the beginning I might not have known, and I'm trying to help people who are like myself just a few years ago when I was looking into these things. But if there's a term that you've heard and I did not talk about, put that in the comments below and I will do my best to answer all of your questions. Otherwise, subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. Like this video if you like it, and I'll see you very soon.